Today, on December 4th, Stuart Scott Day being celebrated by ESPN and all of us in the sports world, and certainly those who spent many years with Stuart at ESPN. v.org/Stuart Scott is the website that you should go to donate to the Stuart Scott Memorial Cancer Research Fund. Got a direct message from his daughter saying, hey, can you help raise awareness? And I thought there is no better way than to do that, than to talk about it as much as I can with a long-time great friend and a man who knew Stuart longer than I did. And his name is Dan Patrick, back here on The Rich Eisen Show from the show right before us, the Dan Patrick Show, every day between 9 a.m. and noon Eastern time. How are you, DP?
Hi, Rich. Doing well.
So, do you remember the first time you met Stu?
It might have been at a pickup football game. I think it was something, it wasn't on the air. I think that it might have been, we were playing a football game with people from ESPN, and I know that he showed up, and I think he had his ankles taped. and I realized he was really serious about everything that he did. And it kind of set the stage for who he was and how he was going to perform when he was on the air.
Ankles taped, huh? That made me laugh.
He was ready just in case an NFL game broke out. Stuart was ready to play, and the same with basketball. He showed up with head to toe Air Jordan stuff, and he picked me up full court in a pickup playoff or pickup game. He picked me up full court, and I realized that that's just who he was. He's as competitive as anybody I ever met.
So did he force you to give it up? Is that what you're saying? He forced you to dish it?
Oh, no. It was, we went toe-to-toe. It got to the point, and John Butchergrass, Jason Jackson, some of these guys, because I said, look, I don't want to play I'll because somebody will get really competitive, and then I'll get competitive, and then it won't end well. And they said, no, we just run up and down the floor. We're just going to sweat. And he picked me up full court. He did everything but slap the floor. And I went, well, this isn't going to end well. It got to the point where I was so mad at him because he was guarding me as if, the national championship was on the line. And I finally was dribbling the ball down the floor. And I said, where do you want me to score on you, you bleepity bleep? And, so it was, we competed with each other when we anchored together.
Oh, yeah.
There was a competition, but that's just who he was. I mean, that's what made Stuart great. He was so competitive. He wanted to be great. He never, ever, ever mailed it in a show. Never. And when he asked he wanted information. And these are things I always admired about him, is he wanted to tell you something different than any other anchor. He wanted to do it in a different way than any other anchor. He was just wired to compete. And even when we did SportsCenter together, we were competing against each other.
Well, there's no doubt about that, Dan. And I know we've discussed this either off air or on air, or whatever. They all mesh together now anyway. But and I know you wanted to remove yourself from the process of ESPN finding the person to put next to you after KO, Keith Olbermann, left, and how there was a major competition going on amongst all of us to try and get that chair next to you. And Stu knew I wanted it, and he was offended by how much I wanted it, because he would tell me, why do you want to, be the guy after KO with Dan on a so-called big show? He goes, we've got that going on right now. We're better than them. He would tell me that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I removed myself from that decision of who I wanted to have next to me, because I said, it's different who I want to work with as opposed to who do you, management, want to see on the show. Because it's different. Because I could say, hey, I want this person because I like them, but they may look at it differently and say, we want, chemistry or, younger, whatever it might be. Because following in Olbermann's footsteps is, that was pretty daunting. And I remember that people were upset with me because I didn't pick them. And I kept telling some of the anchors, I said, I'm not making the decision. And they never believed me. And I said, trust me, I'm not making this decision. And then, they announced that they were going to have Kenny Mayne in there, and Kenny was different than Keith. And, Stuart didn't want the job because he was competitive with the 1 o'clock being already better than the 11 o'clock.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's how deep it went, that he didn't want to join and follow Keith. He wanted to prove that the 1 o'clock was better than the 11 o'clock. So there was so much stuff that went on. It's tough enough to do the show, live TV, and then you throw in all the other things and subterfuge that was going on here, and it was like, this is crazy. But it was a great time because there was so much talent there, and you had to be on your game. It's because there were people, barbarians at the gate. They wanted your job, man. And I just remember when I started doing the NBA Finals, then all of a sudden I had people saying, "Hey, I want to do that," or they go to management and say, "Why can't we rotate, anchors out there covering the NBA Finals?" I'm like, "Wow, this is a competitive field."
Dan Patrick here on the Rich Eisen Show. But when it all came down to it, we did love each other, and I think the competitive spirit that we're just talking about with Stuart is what made it so shocking that cancer took him from us. Because I honestly thought he was going to beat it. I honestly thought that cancer will have met its match in Stuart, and I'm wondering what your seat was during his fight and his battle, and how you viewed it, DP.
I was on the outside of ESPN, but I never asked for anything from ESPN after I left. The only thing I'd ask for with one person that I was speaking to is an update on Stuart. That's it. I didn't ask for anything, didn't care about anything with ESPN. I had moved on, but I wanted to know how he was doing, because I lost my dad to cancer, and I lost him at 54. And I kept thinking about his daughters and, the impact that my father dying left on my two sisters. So, I was involved in it, but not on a firsthand basis. I reached out to Stuart prior to the ESPY appearance, and we wanted to have him on the show, and we were told he may not have enough energy to get to Los Angeles to do the ESPYs. And, I remember watching that. And it's one of those that you can put, things to the side. Maybe we weren't as friendly as we could have been, should have been. We were very competitive. I think we respected each other. But when he got up on that stage, like, there's just certain moments where you go, that was a man-sized performance there. Like that, I don't have that in me. I don't have what he had in him, that ability to get up there and say what he said and the way he said it. And, you're just talking about, and he knew he was dying. But while you're alive, that, use every breath you got. And when he got done with that, I was crying. It was like, whoa, what just happened? They brought his daughter on stage, and I went, no, I can't do this. And, we wanted to have him on to talk about it. And, I think that he was done. I think he had given his message. He was done. And, there was no victory lap. And believe me, Stuart would have taken a victory lap, but I think he had done it on that stage that day. And, I never got a chance to say goodbye. I was in New York, and my relationship with ESPN still wasn't very good. And John Skipper, who was running ESPN at the time, said, I think you should be there. And I said, I'd love to go there. I just don't want to add, any issues to it. I would love to be in there, sit in the back, and go to his wake. And John Skipper arranged for a helicopter to pick me up in New York after a show that I was doing, fly me up to Bristol, get a car, take me to the wake. I get there, and Darius Rucker is singing. Stuart's daughter is singing, and I'm just in the very back. And I didn't want anybody to notice me. I just wanted to go and pay my respects because, you know what? he certainly deserved that and then some. That everybody, if they could go back, should go back to just say thank you, because he opened up a whole different world to SportsCenter. Keith and I were the older guard and Chris Berman the older guard, but Stuart opened this up, and his impact on younger sportscasters, minorities, cannot be measured. And I hope that is never lost in this, these memories and these anniversaries with him. That should be remembered. It wasn't just a great speech. What he did is he changed ESPN. He helped change sportscasting.
I agree with you, Dan. DP here, Dan Patrick on the Rich Eisen Show. A few more minutes remembering our good friend Stuart Scott. And then just his love of life, if we can spend a couple minutes on that. I mean, just his love of life and love of love and wanting people to be together and happy. And, I can personally speak to that, as you know, too, who I'm married to and who I met there at ESPN. And you all were at my wedding. And you were behind the bar during the photograph portion of everything, and you were mixing drinks for everybody. Was Stuart involved in that process too, Dan? What's going on there?
He might have, because he might have been competitive and say that he could make a better drink than me. I have no idea.
I remember that.
But I always tell people the one story that I'll always remember working with him was this Sunday night, and they're playing the beginning of SportsCenter, the theme music. Stuart would always be putting drops in his eyes because of his eyesight,
right?
Bad eyesight, and he put in drops and got up and left the set. So we're in the beginning where dun, 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 and he gets up and leaves. Now I know in the next 14 seconds we're going to be on camera. He goes off. His scripts are right there in front of me. And I come out on camera.
Did you read it?
On a Sunday night. And I now have to do the first 15 minutes of SportsCenter. And that means I have to do his highlights in his words, and it's on cameras. Can I get a witness from the congregation? Pookie, Ray, and Lucretia.
All of them. Yeah, they were all there. Yeah.
And then, so I read his highlights and my highlights. We got to the commercial. He comes back on, doesn't say anything, and then he doesn't say anything. We go back on camera, and people were like, "What happened?"
Right.
And we had to then, once we got done with the show, go back and do the entire what's the A block, the first 15 minutes,
right?
Because Stuart lost his contact lens, and I did his portion and my portion in the first 15 minutes.
Oh. Could you imagine if there was Twitter then? I mean, we would have that would be preserved forever. I could be able to call that up right now in the palm of my hand. Oh my gosh!
Oh my God!
So he never said anything to you, and then he never said anything. He never said, "Hey, is this what happened?" Huh?
No. Until after the show.
Yeah.
And he said he didn't even say it to me. He said it to somebody else about he had lost a contact lens. But it's one of those where you go, I don't know where he's going. Dun, 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 and then you're like, welcome to SportsCenter. And you had Stuart's pile of papers over there.
Oh yeah, they would. And he would scroll. He'd be scrolling his catchphrases on all of his shot sheets. So you said, "Hi, I'm Dan Patrick, and I'm Stuart Scott," or because
no, I didn't do that. I just said, I think I just said, "Hi, I'm Dan Patrick, and welcome to SportsCenter," and then it's set up on prompter. "Hi, I'm Dan Patrick alongside Stuart Scott," and so I just breezed through that, and then I just went into my first read. Because my producers in my ear just said, just go to camera one. We'll just start SportsCenter. And then I got done with my highlights, and then I realized I had to go on camera, read what Stuart wrote, not knowing what Stuart wrote, because I was seeing it for the first time live on the prompter on TV in front of a couple million people.
So I guess you handled it. You were cooler than the other side of the pillow. In other words, Dan.
I don't know if I was.
Level. No. But it's funny because that wasn't expected. There were times though that Stuart would and I would try and hose the other at the end of a show. That was the beginning of the show. We noticed that there was one anchor on the air. I'll just say his name. I don't care. Bob Stevens, if you remember. Where Big Show Bob, because one time when Keith did a show from Shea Stadium, I think it was on the night that Jackie Robinson was being honored and everybody would now have to retire number 42. Bob did the show with you, and we were all wondering, hey, he just got there. How come we can't get that seat? Which, again, pissed Stuart off that I was complaining about it. But anyway, we noticed that Bob would have the tendency in the last segment, like how many seconds we got? 50 seconds, 35 seconds, and the producer would say in your ear, okay, there's 50 seconds, you're tossing a baseball tonight, all that sort of stuff, and that's how you're going to get off the air. We noticed that Bob would have the tendency to take the entire time himself and thank you as well as a viewer and say good night, and you would just sit there nodding your head the entire time. So Stuart and I would know, we would say how much, who's going to end the show, how much time's left, and we would give each other a furtive glance that we're going to big show the other. And once the producer said, all right, Stuart, you take it, I'd be like, oh, come on now. And he would take the entire 50 to 60 to 70 seconds sometimes, and I'd just have to sit there and nod and say, for Rich Eisen, I'm Stuart Scott. Good night. That's the way we'd handle that.
Big Show Bob. Yeah,
oh
yeah. There's nothing worse than sitting on camera, nodding your head, like you're the RCA Victor dog while somebody is on camera and they're just talking for a good 30 or 40 seconds.
Because then you got to look at the other one. Sometimes you look at them and you nod at them and then you nod back at the camera.
And then you look at the camera. Yeah. There's a science to it. Yeah, we've all been there before.
DP.
Hanging somebody out to dry.
Hey, I didn't even get to any sports talk. I knew we wouldn't, but it's all good.
That's all right.
Thanks for doing this. I just figured, you know what? Let's get, you're the only one I could think of. Let's talk about Stu and his legacy and send it out there, and let's everybody go again to v.org/Stuart Scott and raise as much money for the Stuart Scott Memorial Cancer Research Fund. Thanks for taking part, DP.
All right, buddy.
Take care, pal. You got it. That's Dan Patrick. Watch again his show before ours every day. Listen to it every day before ours. On Audience, Fox Sports Radio, etc. That's right here on The Rich Eisen Show. Again, v.org/Stuart Scott.
For more of The Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV for free on BR Live or download The Rich Eisen Show app.